My name is Kaylynn Kuehn, Senior Division Individual Performance. I am not strong after these weeks. Good morning, class. My name is Mrs. Anderson. Our discussion topic for today is hunger strikes for women's suffrage in the 1920s. Hunger strikes for women's suffrage in the 1920s. This was an important time for women in history. Women did not have the right to vote and could barely participate in politics. Men had complete control of the country. It started to change in the 1800s when Susan B. Anthony became the first women's rights suffragette. She began by giving speeches across America. Then, in 1863, she created the National Women's Loyal League. She inspired women to join the League and to fight for the vote. Later on, she inspired Alice Paul. Paul was first introduced to women's suffrage in 1910 when she was in London and saw women throwing rocks at windows to gain public awareness of women's suffrage. She joined them and then was arrested and thrown into a jail where she participated in her first hunger strike. 3 years later, after Paul was released, she created the National Women's Party. The party's main goal was to win the vote and to gain public awareness of women's suffrage. In 1917, National Women's Party members marched up to the White House and began to peacefully picket to gain the attention of President Wilson. At first, people admired the courage and bravery of the women picketing, but after the U.S. entered World War I, people began to see their picketing as unpatriotic and disrespectful. After the picketing went on for more than a few months, the president and his administration arrested their leader, Alice Paul, in hopes to discourage the picketers from continuing. Since picketing was legal, they decided to arrest them for the reason of obstructing traffic in front of the White House. Policemen warned the women if they are to picket again, they will be arrested and put on trial. The very next day, 100 women marched up to the White House in an attempt to picket again, but Alice Paul started another, and were arrested immediately on site, while Alice Paul started another hunger strike. Hello, my name is Alice Paul. I've recently been imprisoned due to the policemen hoping that would discourage the protesters from continuing. They will not cease, nor will I in this prison. I've been through this once before, in the Holloway prison. And I previously wrote to a newspaper about my experience, that I am now experiencing once again. It does not matter, I am taking a stand for women's rights. As I said in the newspaper, I practiced the strike until November 11th. After that, they fed me twice a day by force, except one day when I was too ill to be touched. I have no complaints against the Holloway officials. I spent most of my time in bed because I refused to wear the prison clothes. Each day I was wrapped in blankets and taken to another cell to be fed. The food being injected through my nostrils. During this operation, the largest wardress in Holloway sat astride my knees, holding my shoulders down to keep me from bending forward. 2 other wardresses sat on either side, holding my arms down as a towel was placed around my throat and a doctor put a tube down my nostril. Then my head was pushed forward. Once I managed to get loose, snatching the tube and tearing it with my teeth. I did not give in. This prison treats me and the other women the same way. I will still not give in, no matter how much they do or how much I must endure. All the officers here know that the women participating in a strike should be treated as political prisoners. We have told them. God knows we don't want other women to have to go through this again. How long must we fight these politicians for justice? My name is Sir William Biles. I'm a fellow politician that is opposed to women's suffrage. I am here before you today to speak forth against women's suffrage. Women have already influenced the world enough. They have won the empire by sending forth their sons to do its work. They have won the empire by sending forth their sons to do its work. The women that want the vote now are not governed by their own consent. It is a violation of the first representative and the government. The opposition to the enfranchisement of women is not an argument, it is masculine prejudice. One must stand against their attempts to picket, so that we remain the great country we are. They even tried to picket when we have a war on our hands. The biggest reason, in my opinion, why we should not grant the vote to women is that it would be taking them away from the household into a rather dirty game of politics. Everyone must know that a man without a woman to take care of his home and his children is incompetent. The home cannot go on. These women baffle me. Why do they decide to starve themselves for this ridiculous cause when they should be taking care of the household? Hello, my name is Doris Stevens. I am here with Miss Paul in this horrid place. Nothing much happens here, so I write mostly to pass the time. If this thing is necessary, we will naturally go through with it. The women are also magnificent, so beautiful. Alice Paul is as thin as ever, pale and large-eyed. We have been in solitary for 5 weeks. There is nothing to tell that the days go by somehow. I have felt quite feeble the last few days failed, so that I could hardly get my hair brushed. My arms ached so, but today, I am well again. Alice Paul and I talk back and forth, though we are at opposite ends of the building, and a hall door also shuts us apart. But occasionally thrills. We escape from behind our iron-barred doors and visit. Great laughter and rejoicing. My fainting probably means nothing, except that I am not strong after these weeks. Alice Paul's in a psychopathic ward. She has dreaded forcible feeding frightfully, and I hate to think of how she must be feeling. I had a nervous time of it, gasping a long time afterward, and my stomach rejecting it during the process. I spent a bad, restless night, but otherwise, I'm all right. The poor soul who fed me got literally besprinkled during the process. I heard myself making those hideous sounds. One feels so forsaken when one lies prone, and people shove a pipe down one's stomach. This morning, but for an astounding tiredness, I'm all right. I'm waiting to see what happens when the president realizes that brutal bullying isn't a quite statesman's-like method for settling a demand for justice at home. At least if men are supine enough to endure women to their eternal glory, are not. Don't let them tell you we take this well. Miss Paul vomits much. I do too. We think of the coming feeding all day. It is horrible. The doctor thinks I take it well. I hate the thought of Alice Paul and the others if I take it well. I can only hope that our persistence of the strikes and the stand that we are making will have an impact on our future society. So, as you can see, Alice Paul's stand for suffrage through a hunger strike contributed to women gaining the right to vote in the 1920s. Her strike spread throughout the district jail. More and more women began to refuse to eat, and most of them eventually were force-fed. Her strike even spread to the Occoquan workhouse, where some of the women that had picketed were being kept. The public became aware when letters were smuggled out of the district jail some of the women were being kept in. With World War I raging on, the president and his administration could no longer pay for the forced feedings of the women, and because the newspapers were publishing the writings of these women that were arrested. With the public awareness, the administration was forced to release them. With the strikes paved the way for women equality and participation in politics. women have been nominated for the Supreme Court of Justice, ran for vice president, and been nominated into a major party. In conclusion, Alice Paul and her hunger strikes took a stand for women's suffrage and paved the way for women equality and participation in politics we see today. That is the end of our discussion. See you next class.